Hey Darren, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing really well.
Awesome.
Really well.
Well, yeah, I wanted to, after watching your movie, I just thought it'd be cool to talk to you, one, about your bike trip, two, about the movie, and three, maybe just about anything that you learned along the way.
Yeah, yeah.
So, where did it all start? Like, how did you even think, like, I want to ride my bike across the country or something?
Yeah, okay, so I was in Boston. I had graduated from college and I was about a year out of college. And I had a pretty big breakup with a woman that I was with for 4 years. And I created a list of a whole bunch of things that I wanted to do in my life. And one of them was bike across the country. And it got on that list because my mom, for her 50th birthday in 2005, biked across the country with a group of women all over 50. And then my professor, one of my my mentor and like favorite professor at college, he had biked across the country 4 different times in his life. And biking is a part of his life. He bikes to and from Emerson, which was my college in Boston. And so these two important people in my life have had that similarity.
Yeah.
And so I think it was just in my consciousness when I was like, okay, I highly respect these people. I could emulate them in some way.
But was there some part of the experience that you wanted? I mean, like, biking across the country is not just a total joy all the time either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wanted the challenge. There was a lot of I had wrapped myself around the relationship so much that I felt like a lot of the opinions that I had, or I was saying I had, was derived from this woman's opinions. And so once I split from her, I really didn't feel as though I consciously knew what I thought about things, like anything really.
Yeah.
And so challenging myself and forcing myself into a position where I had to make decisions on how I felt was a big thing about it.
Okay.
I also I was feeling down about life. Like I didn't feel like I was accomplishing things, and so this was a way to be like, I can physically accomplish something.
Yeah.
And I knew my mom had done it, and I knew Ken, the professor, had done it. So, and two of my friends the year before had done it, and so I was just like, I can do this. That I wasn't too worried about. It was just like figuring out how to.
Yeah. So how did you figure out how to? I mean, you had your mom. She had already done it.
Yeah, and she was a big encourager. A lot of it. So I had the idea to bike, and then I was talking to my friend Cody, who he and I own Chance of Fate Productions together, and I was having this conversation with him where I didn't want to leave my career. I was worried that if I left for 3.5 months, that my acting and filmmaking career would just take a dive and nobody would know about me and I would have to rebuild and all this sort of stuff. And Cody was like, well, why don't we make a documentary to be able to continue that? And so that became a driving force. It kind of became a purpose to do it also. And so when I would talk to people, it would be like, yeah, I'm creating a documentary and I'm biking across the country, or vice versa. And that kind of just kept me motivated because I came up with the idea about a year. I was going to leave in like 4 months after having the idea of it. But then I started getting some acting gigs and film gigs, and so I pushed it off for about a year.
Oh, okay.
So over that year, I would talk with people about it. I got a bike. I didn't have a bike when I had the idea, and so I got I borrowed a friend's bike, and then my dad was like, you need an actual bike, because I was riding a female mountain bike that was small for me. And so my dad was really great and helped me buy a bike, a touring bike, the Surly. And so it became this motivation of like, okay, I'm putting together a production. I have a business proposal, like I need X amount of dollars for all of this. So that allowed me to like plan it out more.
Yeah.
And keep me motivated.
What was the route that you eventually ended up taking across the country?
So I started in Boston, and then I stayed on the eastern side of the Appalachian Mountains, and then went down through Georgia to Pensacola, Florida.
So that alone is a long trip. Yeah.
And then from Florida, I went to New Orleans, and New Orleans was kind of my halfway route. I knew I was going to end in San Diego because that was where my mom started her trip. Okay. I kind of wanted to do like a little, I don't know, somehow relate in that way. Yeah. And so I had some friends in New Orleans, so I stayed in New Orleans for like 2 weeks, and then I had never been to the Grand Canyon, so I wanted to go to the Grand Canyon. So I went diagonally through Texas to up to Taos, New Mexico, and then cut over to the Grand Canyon. And then from the Grand Canyon, I dropped down into San Diego.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah, that's pretty long.
It was long. People told me like, oh, you should fly west and then bike east.
Back to east.
But I don't know. For some reason, that didn't make sense to me.
I think I may have even recommended that to you because I always say like it's easier to come back towards your home than it is to get further and further and further away each day.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, I think maybe symbolic. This is like definitely post the psychological study, but I think maybe I was trying to get away from Boston,
right?
And
so it worked better the other way around for you.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so I mean, it was all like personally funded. My parents definitely helped out a lot, and then I worked to save money to be able to do it, and I was working odd jobs, so it wasn't like I had a career that like if I left for 3.5 months, I'd get fired.
Right. Yeah. Do you have any idea how much the trip cost or anything?
I do if I look at the budget. So
what's just a ballpark? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think
you were on the road for how long? How many?
For 3.5 months.
3.5 months. Okay.
And I camped for most of it, or stayed with like people I met. I would say like including the bike, which was $1,000. Maybe $6,000 to $8,000, because I budgeted to be able to eat out, eat at restaurants.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to meet people rather than like cooking my beans every night.
Yeah, exactly. That's good.
So yeah, I think it was around $6,000 to $8,000 if I were to not do the filming.
Okay.
But I added about another $8,000 to $10,000 for filming and filming equipment and data management and extra hard drives and all that stuff. So.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah.
And what was it like filming the whole adventure? Because I've tried to shoot little videos. I still do little videos of myself on my bike trips. It's not easy, No.
Yeah, I don't think I would do it again that way, unless I get paid to do it.
Yeah.
But it was a good experience. I'm glad I did it, but it removed me a lot, I felt, from the actual experience.
Yeah.
in the film I clump it into one instance where it cuts to black and it's like no more cameras, no more interviews, that sort of thing. And that actually happened twice during the trip, where I was just fed up with it, because it was like I originally wanted to do this for myself, and then it became so much about doing it for the social media, for the film, for like making. I would be like, oh, what would other people want out of this experience, instead of what do I want out of this experience?
Yeah. Well, there's a point too in the film, though. I thought it was like actually like one of your best parts, where you're interviewing these two guys by the truck, I think, or something like that, just on the side of the road, and you pull out your camera and get this really kind of off the cuff interview, you know. Yeah. And I thought that was like really like one of the best moments, and I think for anyone that's traveled by bike, like you have those little by the road conversations that happen just out of the blue, but when you pull out a camera, it instantly like shuts the person down a lot of times.
It can,
you know.
Yeah. Yes, B and Lewis were those guys, and yeah, I feel like I got better at making people really comfortable with filming. And I mean, I had the DSLR, the Canon 7D, so it wasn't as imposing. And then I got really good at being able to like kind of hold the camera to the side or down here, and it wouldn't.
So they could still look at your face. I would tell the people to
talk to me, not the camera. Which worked out well. And then I feel like, and maybe you have this experience too, is like I feel like because I was traveling by bike, people were more open to talking to me.
Sure.
Because I'm vulnerable.
Yeah, especially when you're alone too.
Yeah. So I felt like I was able to break down those barriers pretty quickly, so people could get comfortable.
Yeah.
Which was really important for me as the filmmaker, because I was like, I don't want to get really planned out conversation.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking of like I was staying in this hotel in South Africa, and like the woman at the front desk like just started telling me this like incredible story about how her son was like electrocuted and like burnt from the inside out, basically, like really, and you know, like tearful, like incredible story.
Yeah.
And she had like this really positive attitude about it and everything, which was crazy. And I was thinking, God, if you could just put this 5-minute interview on camera, like it would win awards just for that, you know what I mean? But like, I couldn't, she was so in the moment telling the story to me that I couldn't be like, hold on a second, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you know, and that happens so many times, and it's just, it's like, I need a spy camera just right here or something, I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah, no, that would, I mean, there were plenty of conversations that I had that I just didn't feel comfortable pulling the camera out, because the situation wasn't one of me going, I'm a filmmaker, I'd love to interview you.
Yeah.
It was very much just like, yeah, there's two, but this one particular one where in Delta, Pennsylvania, which is this like really, really small town, I knocked on the door of this church, and this woman answered, and she's in spandex, like workout clothing.
Oh, okay.
and I asked her if I could put my tent on the church's property, and she contacted the pastor, and the pastor said that's okay. And I was asking her like what she's doing. She does a Jazzercise for Jesus thing.
Okay.
And so we just started talking, and we talked about religion, and we talked about like her relationship to religion, and how she used to be a drug addict, and like how she hit rock bottom, and then her great aunt introduced her to Jesus and all this sort of stuff. And we had a great a great conversation because I'm not religious, and so I felt like I was in a situation where I could actually ask her the questions that I had been wanting to ask people of devoutness.
Yeah.
And she wasn't defensive about it, which is great. And so that conversation was something that I really wanted. I was like, there were times when I'm like, I want to pull the camera out. I want to pull the camera out. But at the same time, this woman would not have been the same.
Yeah.
She might have said yes to filming, but she would have not been the same.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a judgment call on there that I had to make, but I feel like more often than not, people are happy to tell their story, I think.
Yeah. Well, I've just watched so many documentaries about bike touring because I like the epicenter of the subject, I guess.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like every movie I watch in a small way or a big way sometimes misses like what we're talking about right now. Like those off the cuff conversations are really like what make bike touring so magical sometimes, and you really only get the true experience. Like you had moments in your film where I was like, that's it right there. You know what I mean? But
yeah, it doesn't fully capture that, like, up or sitting on the side of the road and somebody pulls up and says, "Hey, do you need anything to help?"
Right.
Help, and they're like, "No," and they're like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. And the feelings of like fear, like, is this person trying to do something to me, or are they trying to help me, or and then yeah, so it's like one of those things. I think like that's why you have to, like, you can watch the movie, but then you got to try it yourself or something,
totally. Well, that's why. So the original plan with Bike Against the Wind was to try and use it to help promote touring and like an active and positive lifestyle. It's just things have gotten out of it. So yeah. I've tried to move on.
Well, I mean, after watching the film, I do think it'd be a good thing for especially younger people that are getting into or have even the slightest interest in cycling, because I think like a lot of young people, especially, I know when I first started, I would relate very well to your film, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah. There's still a couple of strings out there for it to be doing something. I'm going to be sending it to a festival that a friend of mine runs up in Idaho, and then, which is where I'm originally from. And then, I'm going to do, I haven't, so Cody, who's the main editor for Bike Against the Wind, he and I have not watched the film together since it's been finished. And we haven't seen each other in a couple of years, which is really sad. And so what I'm hoping to do is go up to Idaho and throw a viewing party and have like friends and family and celebrate with Cody, because he and I haven't celebrated that aspect yet.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So. What I mean, from like I run Bicycle Touring Pro, where people are trying to do these bike trips for themselves. Like, what lessons did you learn from your trip that like you would pass on to someone else?
Yeah, I mean, I think you talk about this a little bit, or maybe it's just makes sense so much in my head, is this idea of you don't really need to train to tour. Like touring is a different experience than like cycling.
Entering a race or something.
Yeah, exactly. And so whenever people are like, "Oh man, I'd love to do that, but I don't bike that much," and I'm like, I didn't own a bike when I started it. You know? And so I tell people, like, find the time and just do it. If you want to do it, just find the time and go and do it. Don't try and plan it so much. Like, plan a little bit.
Yeah.
But you don't have to. You don't
spend
have to
2 years planning the trip or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like I wanted to have every route planned out across the country. And I realized, like, I got the adventure cycling
route maps,
pack stuff, and they gave them to me for free because of sponsorship, which was cool. And so, like, I was like, yeah, I got to use these. And then within days, I was like, I don't need this. Like, I'll just figure it out as I go.
Yeah.
Which was great. So yeah, I mean, I pretty much anybody that has expressed interest in touring, talk to me. I'd be like, just do it. Like, figure out the time, and just go. Like,
Yeah.
and even if it starts as like weekend trips or a week trip, like just do it.
Yeah.
Because I haven't talked to anybody that's done it that has regretted it. I've talked to people that have no interest in ever doing it again,
Yeah.
but they don't regret it.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's kind of what it is. And you don't have to have a fancy bike, just a bike that you feel comfortable on.
that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because I've done, I've talked about it before, but I've done my first 2 trips was on a bike that was a piece of junk, like 30-year-old, and it just made it so much harder. Like I was a really young guy, and I'd be being passed by these old folks, carrying way too much gear, and it was mainly because my bike was stuck in first gear, or whatever. So it's just,
totally.
It made a big difference once I got like an actual touring bike. But
and then those people that go across the country on single speeds.
Yeah.
And sure.
Yeah.
To each their own.
Right. Exactly. Or have you seen the people on unicycles?
I have.
Man,
it's
crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
So what about like in your movie, it's kind of a journey of personal change as well. Like, how do you think you have changed since the bike trip, or do you think the bike trip has changed you in any way? Like, did you feel like a different person at the end, or not really?
I felt more in touch with myself. So I didn't feel like a different person. I felt more me. Like I feel like the biggest strength that grew in me was my understanding of trusting my instincts, which is a confidence thing.
Yeah.
I struggle, like, I was pretty confident in high school, and then through college and through this relationship I was in, I lost a lot of confidence in myself. And so building that up through the bike trip was something that was important to me. I don't feel like I came out of the trip and I'm like, I fucking rode across the country. I can do anything.
Yeah.
Like, intellectually, I was like, I rode across the country. I can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
But emotionally, I was still like, believing in myself is still a struggle, as I think everybody is continually going through that. But I did learn to trust myself and my instincts a lot on the trip, and that was wonderful. That was something that I really wanted to capture in my film, but I couldn't figure out how to do it, because there was this moment, like, it was outside of Troy, Alabama. So I was like almost halfway through my trip, and I was talking to Granny, the woman from Troy, the old lady, and she just inspired me to like just be in love with myself and life and all that sort of stuff. And so I was biking away from her place, and everything just felt great. Like, everything was okay. My legs were moving. I was positive about life. And I didn't know exactly where I was going, but that didn't matter. And I just knew that I could find a place to sleep. I could find food. I could, so that confidence and that excitement regarding my instincts was really nice.
That's cool.
So I think that was the big thing that changed through the trip, through the physical trip.
Yeah.
Making the film was way up and down. I mean, it took me 6 years to actually
get it complete. Yeah.
And that was treacherous on my psyche. Like, just
way harder than the bike trip itself.
Way harder.
Yeah.
So much harder. So it was just, that was a big, like, losing confidence in myself, gaining confidence.
That's awesome. You finished it.
I finished it.
Yeah. And what are you doing now?
Oh man, so I live in the Bay Area now. I live in Emeryville, which is just north of Oakland,
California. Yeah.
and and I just had a short film that went to Sundance, and we actually won the grand jury award for shorts. So,
really?
yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was completely unexpected. So things from that, I'm riding on a high after that. I feel pretty good. And so when I came back to the Bay Area, I've been talking with a lot of people, production companies and things like that, to get more work. I'm like filming and producing some promotional video for San Francisco Film Society or San Francisco Shakespeare Festival, and I'm in a play in the next couple of months, and then my girlfriend now, she's actually my fiance. We just got engaged in December, so I moved in with her in January. We got engaged in December, and
wow, congrats.
So thank you. So that's like the really big life thing that's going on right now.
Yeah, you're keeping busy.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't like being bored. I'm rarely bored. So.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. And what about Bike Against the Wind? Where do people watch that?
Can they get it on bikeagainstthewind.com. So that I released it online for free for people. I'm sending it. I'm going to be sending it to a festival, so I might have to take it offline for a little bit. But I have a feeling bikeagainstthewind.com it'll be up there for people's access to it.
All right.
All right. Good talking with you.
Yeah, good talking to you. See you. Bye.
As many of you know, I have had a goal in the last couple of years to ride my bike across every country in Europe. And at the moment, I've really only got a few countries that I haven't been to yet, one of which is Russia. So yeah, I really want to go to Russia. It's a big country, a lot to see, and maybe I've been saving it for last. But yeah, I'm really interested in the people there, the architecture, the wilderness areas. There's really a lot about Russia, I think, to like.